Well, hello there, guys, and welcome back to Noob DM. This is Noob DM Ariel, and I thought we would do something a little bit different today. I have made videos, or at least one video that I can recall, regarding Dungeons and Dragons Online, DDO for short, and I was picking some races and some classes that are available to players. Some of them are free to play, some of them you have to unlock or pay for, and I wanted today to try and do something different and react to somebody else's video um, about another YouTuber by the name of Strimtom. He has pretty good Dungeons and Dragons online content. There's a couple of YouTube creators out there with good DDO content, like this person, as well as Axel, DDO Axel, I think is the channel name. So I will put descriptions and rather links in the description to those content. And the reason I'm kind of drifting back into the MMO scene, DDO in particular, is because here currently I have kind of paused a little bit my fifth edition campaign at the local gaming store only because I was a little bit concerned about the uptick, spike, tremendous increase in the Omicron virus variant, even though everybody that plays there around the table usually has to uh, adhere to the safety protocols at the store, wear your N95 mask, and social distance as much as you're able to social distance around a gaming table, which is not really a whole lot, to be honest. And so I want to see the numbers drop down before I get back into in person around the table, which is a shame because we actually had some pretty good campaigns and games going. So for now, it's going DDO, in my opinion, is kind of a poor substitute for Dungeons and Dragons um, around the table. But until I can organize another Zoom campaign, I think this is the best I can do. But I'm always interested in this game, and I'm thinking of becoming a subscriber or a VIP so I can get access, unlock all the non-paid races such as the iconic races. But I might not do it right away because, as I understand, classes, I should say, iconic classes don't really even start until like mid game or level 15 or so. I think max level on Dungeons and Dragons Online these days is um uh 30 levels, level 30. I do have a fourth level dwarf in another server, but I might just start with my level one elf and just sort of see how far I can take that one. But for now, before I jump back into, I was interested in finding out what others have to say about the different races. So this will be a two-part, I guess. The first part will I'll kind of react to this video, talking about the different races available in the game, and after from a beginner's perspective, although I'm not really a beginner, I'm sort of coming back to the game after a really long time or a long pause. And then after that, maybe I'll follow this up with a reaction to obviously the classes because you have your races and then you follow that up with the classes. So without further ado, like they say, let's just get into this reaction. So we're going to start looking at the various races. I think I'm just gonna restrict this part of our analysis and the video to a reaction to his discussion about the DDO races that are free to play because um, there really is not a big incentive, at least in the early levels, to pay for a VIP subscription or to get any of the paid races. Because as he goes on to explain, you can get the draw. Elf race pretty easily, actually, for just playing the game. And some of the other races are iconic, what they call iconic. And so those are paid races, but they don't even come into play until later. I think like level 15, like mid game. Max level is level 30, if I'm not mistaken, on DDO. So at the early level, you don't have to even pay for some of these races. But we'll take a look at the free races now.
Everybody, welcome back to Beginner Basics, where today we're talking about races. All of the races in Dungeons & Dragons Online, what they're good for, and what you can do with them. And to get started, we're going to start with the free-to-play races, beginning with human. Now, humans are one of the most versatile races in the entire game. They just get an extra feat at level 1, so you can pick an extra ability, which is usually useful on any type of character where you're going to be using either both martial weaponry and spellcasting. Anything where you want to do any type of hybrid, humans are there. On top
Yeah. The only thing I have to say about humans is I don't think I've ever played as human in DDO, and actually I said this in other videos, but in fantasy games, it's just a personal choice. I'm a human like 24/7 every day in real life. So why would I want to play the same race, a boring old human in the fantasy games or the MMOs, or even Dungeons and Dragons tabletop, when there's so many playable options, other races to choose from. But that's just my personal bias. I guess the answer to that is why would you want to play it? Well, um, because of the stats, and he explains some of the bonuses and some of the advantage to being human in GDO. But I just personally feel like I would never play one.
of that, they also get extra skill points, so if you just don't want to put as many points into intelligence on a character, again, human has you covered by giving you more skill points every time you level up. Their individual enhancement tree once you get in game also allows you to get minor specializations to different like ability scores, and also just lets you heal for more, which is pretty nice. Overall, humans a very basic race, but it kind of gets the job done, and there's really no build where you can't go human. They all really work as humans, sometimes maybe not the best, but they're very strong for what they do. Next, we're going to look at the Corvair Elves, another free-to-play race. Elves get an increase to Dex and a minus to their Constitution, so they have a little bit less health. Also, the bonus to Dex lets them hit some of those Dex goals for feats like 2-weapon fighting and a lot of the ranged and bow feats. Now, the Elves also get a lot of basic Elven feats like Elven Senses, letting them have higher search and spot. And on top of that, they also get proficiencies with a bunch of weapons, so if you're an elf, you can just always use a bow, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, I went actually Corvair Elf. Um, yeah, last night I was actually rolled up an elf ranger because I really like the ranger class, and I can't believe this whole time that I've been playing DDO for all these years, I never played a ranger class. Most, even though I liked them in the tabletop version, and I would say mostly because I'm always kind of like I favor or tend to go to for the melee type characters, and as he explains when he talks about the classes, um, the elves are not really sturdy. They're not like a dwarf where you have a lot of hit points to begin with. So they're kind of what we consider squishy, and um, and that's fine. I mean, you can do damage from range attacks. Now, I will say that I found out kind of a new move on my part by I was playing around in the wilderness area. I played around 3 or 4 hours yesterday, and uh, I was doing damage with like melee weapons, even though it's more of a range class because even though I had a number of nice bows that I got through dungeons, um, I ran out of ammo. I forget, like in some of these old MMOs, like retail WoW Classic. I mean, I'm sorry, retail WoW, for example, Warcraft. You don't really need to you always have ammo, but most of the time. But in the older versions, like in classic and some of these older, you can run out of ammo. So I had to run back to the store, and I don't think I got the right type of ammo. Though I had like some bolts, and I needed arrows. It was a mess. So I couldn't really figure out where to get more arrows in time. But I was already in the dungeon. But I was hitting pretty hard with the melee weapons anyway. Just went up to them. But I think you get bonuses for being a ranger, being more of a range class. So yeah, it was still fun.
Additionally, the Elven Enhancement Tree allows them to get more stats and bonuses with bows, and one of the more primary things is they also get the ability to detect hidden objects just by default. So if you happen to have a good amount of search and spot, instead of actually having to press that search key, your character will just spot it with their Elven sight. So it's very, very interesting. Something I actually forgot to talk about with humans, and I'm not going to edit it back together, is dragon marks. Every different race of the base races gets access to dragon marks, and the new ones don't really. Humans get access to 4 different kinds of dragon marks, which are special feats you can take that give you extra powers at level 1, and it's And you can also specialize into them as your race. The humans have access to 4 of them: the Dragon Mark of Making, giving them additional powers of repair and to repair like constructs and that sort of thing; the Dragon Mark of Passage, letting them move around really quickly and teleport and all sorts of stuff; the Dragon Mark of Finding, allowing them to find things and get more treasure sometimes; and then finally the Dragon Mark of Sentinel, which allows them to cast some more protective spells and abilities and kind of as a focus on like Intimidate and Tankiness.
Okay, so he's talking about dragon marks, and I figured for those of you who are not familiar with the Eberron campaign or Eberron in general, DDO is when it, at least when it first came out back in 2006, when Turbine was the developer, they decided for some weird reason to go with Eberron as a campaign setting, which was kind of a weird move at the time. And I think I've talked about this before too in my other DDO video, but it bears is germane to or relevant to what he's talking about in terms of the dragon marks, because dragon marks are a unique feature found in the Eberron campaign setting, so you don't necessarily find them in other settings like Forgotten Realms. I never really understood why they didn't go with Forgotten Realms or even like Neverwinter or one of the more popular or more well-known D&D campaign settings in DDO. I mean, I was okay with Everett. In fact, because of DDO, I started playing 3.5 and really getting because the Everon campaign didn't roll out until like third edition, and I started to really like some of the options like the Warforged, which we're not really going to talk about today because it's a paid class in DDO. But Warforged, I rolled up a Warforged cleric for my fifth edition campaign, and it was a lot of fun to create. So I like Eberron, and so that's what he's talking about here. He's talking about the dragon marks, which are a unique feature to the Eberron campaign setting, which is like a steampunk cross with magic type um setting for Dungeons and Dragons 3.5, which is Dungeons and Dragons Online is loosely based on that setting. Although now they've added way more over the years. An old game, so they've added way more campaign settings. So now you can go into Ravenloft and do other things. But at least when it first started, it was strictly a Eberron campaign environment.
Whereas the Elven Dragon Mark that they can pick up is the Dragon Mark of Shadow, allowing them to cast some protective, defensive shadow magic and even walk the edge of shadow if they want. Moving on, we have Halflings. Halflings are a little shorter, the shortest race in the entire game, and as such, they get bonus to dexterity and a minus to strength. Usually,
Another thing he's talking about here is like the bonuses and the minuses. Now that's something that's also unique to the a little bit older editions like 3.5 and even fourth edition, where they carried on the tradition of when you look at your stats and because DDO is loosely based on 3.5 system, they do this here too, where you have in it because in the current game like fifth edition, you get bonuses to like, I think 2 stats per race or class, whatever race class combination you get your 2 bonuses to 2 stats. So for example, if you're a dwarf, I think you get like a bonus to constitution and something else. I don't know if you get, I don't remember if you get to choose the other one. But in but they got rid of like negative stats. So in third edition, for example, if you're playing a a character like a barbarian, I think, or like a half orc. Let's say a half orc because we're talking about races. So the half orc will get a bonus to Constitution because they're pretty strong. I think this is all correct if I'm remembering correctly. I do have the 3.5 player's handbook handy now, so I can kind of take a quick look, at and double check. But they do get they get bonuses and they get negative um, to their negative adjustments to their stats, which is not a case for the new edition of the game. But I thought that was kind of cool because he kept it more balanced, or it's a way to balance the classes and balance um, the racial stats. Let's see, half orcs. Half orcs are on page 18 of the 3.5 uh 3.5 book. And yeah, I was well, no, I was wrong. It's not constitution, it's +2 to strength, -2 to intelligence, and -2 charisma. So that's a limitation that's imposed on the half orc race, where you get some negative bonuses. And this is what he kind of goes into here with the halfling, which is essentially a hobbit. But the halfling will start with a higher dexterity and lower strength. And so there's some bonuses and minuses to their stats.
Really good for like different types of rogues and other characters like that. Anything that wants to hit a certain dexterity requirement is pretty good. Additionally, halflings also get the halfling dragon mark of Jarasco, which allows them to heal. And so now if you're playing as a fighter or a rogue as a halfling, you could just take this dragon mark and be able to cast healing spells on yourself or your allies, which is oftentimes very helpful in the early game. And additionally, their tree focuses a lot on sneak attack because they're so small, giving you a lot of extra damage, making halflings one of the higher damage races, and it's free to play, which is kind of cool. And then lastly, of the free-to-play races, we have Dwarves. Now, Dwarves' Dragon Mark is the Dragon Mark of Warding from the House Kundarak. The Dragon Mark is not as exciting. It gives you a lot of warding spells. You can cast, like, neutralize poison, some protective abilities, and the ability to kind of ward off areas. Actually, I think it's spell resistance, not neutralize poison. But you can ward off areas with different warding spells. The problem is, players usually tend to go pretty fast when they run around and play the game and kind of go to rooms instead of prepping areas to pull monsters into. So it generally doesn't find as much favor as it used to. But they get a bonus to Constitution at a cost to Charisma, so as long as you don't need Charisma, like if you're a fighter or a Barbarian or even a Rogue, this kind of character can be very powerful, a lot of extra tankiness, and their tree gives them a lot of base tankiness as well.
Yeah, so barbarians is tanky, meaning that they fight. They're pretty strong. They have a lot of hit points to begin with in the early levels, and it because they have that negative stat to charisma, it wouldn't make sense for them to be like a a class to choose a. It wouldn't make sense for somebody to choose a class that would get bonuses on that specific attribute. So it's better to if you're gonna go tanky, if you're gonna go with the dwarf, um, and you can play like a barbarian or like a fighter, something that will take advantages of those bonuses to constitution, and not a big disadvantage to like your lower charisma score.
Even like percentage hit point bonuses and a whole bunch of stuff, and a big focus on axes and hammers, so very, very strong. Now, moving off of the free-to-play races, we're just going to...
All right, so that'll be the end of our examination of the races, because the rest of the video he goes into all the races that are not free to play, and maybe I'll do a separate discussion or analysis on that. But right now we're just kind of focusing on free to play because, like I said earlier, the early levels do not necessitate you to spend any money. I mean, you can unlock the the drow elf just by playing. And I think when uh, he talks about races on the paid side, he goes into that. So we're not going to focus on the paid races just yet. We're gonna instead move on to the classes. All right, so now we move on to the different races in DDO where you can choose your own playstyle, and different races. So let's see what and we're just gonna focus on the free to play um, classes right now because there are a lot of classes that are still behind the paywall.
To start, we're going to work on the free-to-play classes and then move into the premium classes. So beginning with Melee, you have quite a few options, starting with Fighter. Fighters are a martial weapon class. They attack people with weapons. No magic here, but lots of cool tactics, different types of abilities and attacks, but mostly weapon-focused characters. Now, whether ranged or melee, it doesn't really matter, and they mix well with a lot of other different classes as well. The primary focus of fighters is as a DPS type character, high damage, using their Kensai tree where they can focus on one weapon type and get a bunch of abilities and attacks that go along with that. Another way that people commonly use fighter is as actually a multi-class for other less fighter like classes. As an example, a bard may take some levels of fighter to get some extra defense and also a lot of extra offense that the bard doesn't normally pick up, and you can get a lot of that with just a small investment to fighter.
I'm watching this and I almost forgot this MMO or Dungeons and Dragons Online is so well done and so well um I guess, crafted, modeled after in my opinion, modeled after the tabletop game. That sometimes I forget, like, why is he talking about DPS for a second? And I forget, oh, this is an MMO. DPS is like one of the features of a character, like does damage per second. It's more like a video game term. And then like I say, watching this, I almost forget that he's not talking about Dungeons and Dragons 3.5, the tabletop. He's talking about the video game, and it is such I guess I give props to Turbine and to the original developers of this game, and even Broadsword. I think Broadsword's like the game. No, I'm sorry. Broadsword is Dark Age of Camelot. This one is it has a new company behind it. But anyway, I give props to the game designers for making such a seamless transition from the 3.5 system. You know, as much as you can, making it a unique MMO based on Dungeons and Dragons.
And then finally, a lot of people use fighters because they're very durable, and a lot of times can be a very strong tank when mixed with different classes or even just played on its own. Fighters are really versatile because they gain a lot of feats during the level up process, allowing them to take so many different abilities and be very, very strong. A few of the cons of the fighter, though, are unfortunately because their saving throws are focused on fortitude and not reflex and will, they usually have a bit of a weakness to magic, so magical attacks might hit them a little bit harder, and they might fail some saves against crowd control effects a little bit more often, unless you take care of that and try to build around that. And they have no way to heal. They're one of the few classes in the game that really can't heal themselves at all. Fortunately, you can get potions, and you can have other people who either heal you or summon a hireling, but that is something you're going to have to face if you would like to play as a fighter.
Yeah, I played a couple of fighters when over the years when when I was really heavily playing this game, um, and I can say with all honesty, especially in the early levels again, it doesn't really matter that you can't be cast spells as a fighter because, like he said, if you're in a group, you'll probably have a spellcaster. But even if you're soloing, and a lot of times, unfortunately, because this is an older game, unless you go to a really populated server, you may not join a guild right away, or although I will say that in this game it's easier to join a guild than in other games, but in other MMOs. But if you're not in a guild right away, or you're not running with a group and you're just kind of soloing, because you can solo. This is another great thing that about DDO. I think that people may not realize is that in this game you can solo a lot of um, at least the early level dungeons, and you don't necessarily need a party per se. I mean, it's more fun with a party, but you can solo them. But you can also, like he just alluded to, you can hire a hireling. You can get yourself a hireling. So they have these NPCs all over town, and you can go to them, and with gain money, you can hire get buy a contract for a different for some assistance. So you can hire a some muscle, or you can hire. What I usually do is if I'm playing a melee class like a fighter and I don't have any part, and I'm not part of a party, I'll just go and go to a hireling vendor and get myself. And I had to learn this over time because I didn't know that was a possibility at first, but I found out that you can go to a hireling and you can get a contract for like a caster. So um, you don't have to go into an instance. This is a heavily instance game where individual dungeons. You don't have to go into an instance um, without any healing. Yeah, I mean they do have healing potions that drop from time to time, or you can go to the inn and buy some healing potions before you even go adventuring. But um, you can just buy a hireling contract for little in-game money, and once you enter the dungeon, you can summon your cleric, and there'll be a cleric following you along like a pet. And and they'll heal you, which is like so helpful. So yeah, the fighters are very strong. They have very good melee attacks. Obviously, they have a lot of hit points in Constitution, but it's not a big disadvantage that they are not able to cast.
Overall, a very fun class and versatile with a ton of different builds, and there's no limit on what weapon you can use, you just don't really do magic. Following up immediately after the fighter is the Barbarian. Very similar in that they attack people, however, they have kind of a bigger focus on rage. The Barbarian gets the ability to fly into a rage, so while it doesn't gain as many actual feats and different types of attacks that a fighter might get, instead, they just get more power, more hit points, they just take less damage because they're a Barbarian, and their rage just gives them extra durability and damage for a short duration. Barbarians can sometimes be used as like a pseudo tank almost, because they just have so much health and they just do a lot of damage that monsters just instinctively want to fight them, and they can last for quite a long time. Now, Barbarians are in a similar boat to Fighter in that they don't actually heal themselves for the most part. However, each different Barbarian specialization, there's 3 different ones you can pick from, all of them have some type of healing. Either healing passively, healing with an active ability, or healing with the killing of your enemies, which makes barbarians quite strong and survivable. They also get a couple unique survival mechanics, such as protecting themselves with temporary hit point shields and having a big focus on area of effect and specifically two-handed weapons. You can
Yeah, so very strong class if you want a tank. I had a barbarian that was like for fifth. I think I took him up to sixth, maybe eighth level. I forget. But once you get in the earth, in the more levels you get, the more sturdy you get, the more hit points you get, and the harder you are to hit, and you get more rage mechanic, which is great. I don't see a lot of this. If you're going to go up against monsters in dungeons, and even if you're gonna solo, um, I don't see a disadvantage really in picking like a barbarian. That's what I would recommend. And then, just like I said, get a hireling for a caster like a cleric to go follow you, and he'll heal you. But you probably won't need him as much as if you're playing a squishy character like a ranger, because you have so much tanking ability. Now, I'm going to just once again bear with me and check the book, because I love the fact that 3.5, that like I said, DDO follows 3.5 somewhat loosely, but has a lot of the 3.5 rule set and mechanics. And so Barbarians is on page 24 of the book, and it talks about their their saving throws. Um, their saving throws are like there's 3 kinds of saving throws in the game: fortitude, reflex, and willpower. Or will, and you don't really see them too much when you're playing DDO because they're kind of like in the background, and you don't necessarily save. But I think that that's a benefit of the barbarian class. All right. Well, I guess we're going to finish up on the classes at a later time. I looked at the timestamp on this video and I was getting way entirely longer than I expected. So next time we'll pick up on Paladin and the rest of the classes and races and combos. So thank you so much. So stay tuned for part 2, and thank you so much for tuning into the channel, checking out our DDO examination or analysis of the different races and classes in the game. If you like this type of content, go ahead and hit the like or subscribe. Don't forget to hit like and or subscribe. Also, I have a Patreon now if you want to support the channel. The link to that is found in the description. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk to you very soon.